So here to shed some light and heat is light overheat. Here to shed some light overheat is Professor David Yamane.
It's not that easy.
Jeez. Hey, do you know we have a world-class training school in San Diego, Flight Training International. Action Jackson made me go fly him. He's going to teach him how to fly. Pilots can fly almost every day. We're close to the ocean, desert, and have mountains, unbelievable views, and the international border, and a major military base. That's why San Diego is one of the best places to learn how to fly in the world. Learn to fly in the heart of San Diego, right at Montgomery Field. Getting started is super easy. Give them a call, 858-569-1822, or learn to fly with SDFTI, 858-569-1822.
All right, our next guest is Professor David Yamane. He's from Wake Forest University. He's the author of Gun Culture 2.0. He's an observer of gun culture, not a policy analyst. So he tends to steer away from policy in general, which is really the culture part of it is extremely educational as we talk more and more about policy. I think one should be based on the other, and both are extremely important to understand. Last time we had him on, he was extremely fascinating. Happy to have you back, Professor. How are you, sir?
Gentlemen, I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me back. I know Memorial Day weekend must be a tough time to get guests, so I'm happy to be here.
No, not at all. We were happy. We were stoked to have you on. Really, I'm happy. One of the most talked about guests. You were just on maybe a month or two ago, and I have been talking about you nonstop. I'm really fascinated by your work. I've read a lot more about you, and I can't wait to have you on a lot more often. Now, the topic for today is the importance of intellectual diversity in having conversations across ideological lines. Now, of course, unfortunately, this past week we had something horrific happen in Texas, which sparked a lot of, I'm going to call them conversations. I'm willing to bet that they aren't they're devolving from conversation into, shouting match, name calling arguments. So I think that this is a really timely topic, unfortunately.
It's in a sense, it's the worst of times and the best of times to have these kind of conversations. It's the worst of times because it's so emotional, but it's the best of times because people who are not already kind of committed one way or the other are really looking for answers. So, I saw on Friday at the NRA meeting, you have at the convention center there on the inside, you're having the ILA leadership forum, then you've got the road, and then in the park on the other side, you've got the protest. And, I think to me that's symbolic of the challenge of having these conversations at this time. But I'm sure like you've got people constantly pulling you aside at dinner and just in, text message chats, just trying to figure out what can we do.
Truly, honestly, I think the and usually people are, when they approach me and they know what I do for a living, and they're fairly reasonable. Like, hey, I don't really know. Can we talk about this or whatever? I don't have answers, and what do you think? And this, that, and the other thing. It's the reporters, the journalists that contact me. Their questions are atrocious. It's I don't know, maybe that's not a surprise to people, but no, I find that the people who approach me are relatively reasonable, I guess.
Yeah. And I get a lot of calls whenever anything bad happens with guns. That's really the only time guns are newsworthy. And, I do find myself sort of having to hold firm to the point that I want to make, which is typically it's more complicated than you're suggesting. And, most of the times I'm quoted in the media, it's sort of a somewhat dissenting voice, in a prepackaged narrative. But I feel like it's important for, those of us who the media are willing to call to have our voice represented, at least to some extent. There was a piece in Rolling Stone just the other day about the gun industry and its profits recently. And, I had a little bit in there, but I was able to, say it's not as simple as you sell guns, make money, and people kill other people. And, for me, that's enough. It's not huge, but that's a little bit of light, and that's something that I think that, again, not everybody is on media call lists, but if you are, I really appreciate people taking the opportunity to complexify things.
So what is, describe or tell us what is intellectual diversity? What does that mean to you? Or what do you mean by that?
I think it's part of lots of different kinds of diversities, with people coming from different cultural backgrounds, different social backgrounds, geographic. I've in the past talked about differences between people who are urban and people who are rural. But intellectual diversity is just people who think differently. And, as someone who spent the majority of my life in very bright blue bubbles, as we talked about before, those places are not very intellectually diverse. And it wasn't really until I got involved in gun culture, kind of both personally and as a scholar, that I encountered people who came from very different backgrounds and who just thought differently. I wouldn't say gun culture is a bright red bubble, but it's more red than, the sociology bubble that I come from. And that really challenges you to take what you think you know about how the world works and look at it from the perspective of someone who doesn't share your background. Maybe they served in the military, maybe they were in law enforcement, they might have grown up in a rural area, maybe they didn't go to graduate school. And all of those life experiences really can be brought to bear on one's own thinking in order to kind of expand our understanding. And I find myself working between these two worlds and really coming to see things in a different way. And it doesn't always mean I completely change my mind, but it does force me to move beyond my own assumptions about how things work.
Well, what's the danger of people being in a bubble and staying there too long? What happens to the people in the bubble?
It just reinforces what you think that you already know, and I think it gives you you become more and more convinced of the rightness of your beliefs. And that kind of can lead to fundamentalism. Fundamentalism is a position, we talk about it typically in terms of religion, but a sort of any belief could be adhered to as a sort of fundamentalism if you think that there is no possible way that what you believe could be wrong. And that, I think, feeds on itself. And this is some of what we see, and I think we're learning more and more about how social media algorithms, feed us things that reinforce what we believe and also select for things that are likely to stir us up emotionally. And I think that leads to, heat over light.
And I that's being in that bubble. We're not just talking about, my fear is that there are a lot of listeners who are hearing you say that and are thinking that we're only talking about people that are in anti-gun bubbles. I think that it's dangerous to be in any bubble, and it is dangerous to be, have that lack of intellectual diversity and have no exposure to people that don't have a differing opinion, because then you become, convinced that, you're completely right and that other people are stupid. And the other danger seems to be that if you automatically pass people off who aren't in your bubble as being stupid, I've noticed anecdotally anyway that tends to make people, even more, that bubble gets even thicker.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, it's, again, not about saying all ideas are relative or all values are relative or there's no such thing as truth. It's not that kind of cultural relativism, but it's more, I think, an intellectual humility, where I remember John Meacham gave the commencement address at Wake Forest one year, and he said that reason requires you to accept that you may be wrong. Right? Now, you may end up not being wrong, but to rationally process what you believe, requires you to at least have a moment and say, is what I believe correct? And next week's video on light over heat, this week I talked about how I was, talking about race and guns and gun culture and what happened in Buffalo. And I got some really good insights from people who commented on that and said, hey, you need to look at this in some other ways. And that really helped me. Next week, I'm going to talk about an essay I wrote for an academic journal in which I give a pretty strong argument for why guns are normal and why normal people use guns, and explaining the gun culture 2.0 concept. And one of the peer reviewers who completely disagrees with me on these issues, still was able to push me to see what I was writing about in a more complex way. Right. So, I'm sometimes learning from people who are more within gun culture and are pro-gun. I'm sometimes learning from people who are outside gun culture and are more anti-gun. But in either case, that intellectual diversity helps me to understand the world in a much more complex way. And really, guns are this multifaceted, complex reality in American society, but we're all often just trying to force that reality into a unidimensional box. And, that's just not how things are. That's, again, why I think mass shootings are a particularly bad time to be talking about guns, because that's when people want to shove guns in a box, a simplistic box, more than any time.
All sides, not just, our side, their side, everybody kind of, we immediately start, building up, filling the sandbags and building it up. And I don't want people to believe, I'm not saying that we should accept the other side or change your views, but I think that it helps if you can understand the other side and understand, why it's complex for them, where they're coming from. It will make you a better advocate. Is that an unreasonable thing to say or expect?
No, and I think the other thing is, to your point, that it's not just two sides, that you have a huge number of people who are not bought in one way or the other to being either strongly pro-rights or strongly pro-control, but the visceral reaction to 19 children being killed makes them see certain solutions as being very desirable. Right. And so this is a particular moment when, slamming the shoe on the table and shouting is not going to bring them away from that, and I think that's, again, where...
PRMI Mortgage, primeres.com/Alpine. Hey, if you're looking to buy, refi, or if you're considering a reverse mortgage, call our local mortgage guy that you can trust. Call Chris Wiley at PRMI Mortgage. For nearly 25 years, Chris has been helping local San Diegans with all their mortgage needs. They make it easy. Work with a friendly, expert team with help you get the best deal on a mortgage. Call Chris Wiley, 619-722-1303, or just go to primeres.com/Alpine.
All right, we're talking to Professor David Yamane. We're talking about intellectual diversity, and we were just talking about so let's talk about the advantages. Why would if you're a listener, you're probably pro Second Amendment, you're probably an advocate. What's in it for them, Professor?
Yeah, well, I think that the benefit is to try to bring some of these sort of undecided folks over to your side. Again, I think about this scene that took place in Houston, one gun control group on the lawn, pro-gun people inside the convention center. But there are people who are traveling on that road in between, and they're kind of trying to understand, which side is more appealing to me. Angry shouting is not going to pull people who are undecided or trying to figure it out, over to your side. And that works both ways. Hearing, Beto O'Rourke shouting at a, press conference isn't going to be convincing to people who aren't already bought into that either. So, I think that this is, it's important to rally the base. Obviously, the NRA-ILA Leadership Forum is to rally the base. And if you're standing outside the convention center having an anti-gun rally, you're trying to rally the base. But other people see that. Those things aren't happening in sort of hermetically sealed containers. So, I'm always mindful when I'm speaking about guns to, how will what I say be perceived? Is there anything that I could, say that would be more welcoming as opposed to more off-putting?
So what advice do you have for somebody that's, talking to somebody that they vehemently disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you vehemently disagree with someone, that may be a different story, But I do think that if you approach those interactions with this kind of humility and really trying to understand, what is making this other person, think, again, seek first to understand and then to be understood. That even if you don't convince that person, if you can kind of stand in that person's shoes and understand why what they're saying makes sense. Maybe when you go to the next person who's less committed, you can, work a little bit better to craft an argument that addresses the real concerns they have. And this is one of the things I hate about talking about policy during these times is that no one wants to accept that the other side has legitimate reasons for wanting to solve a particular problem in a particular way. I see like garbage about, people, care more about their guns than about children, right? Or guns have more rights than children. And, that's just offensive. That stirs the base, but it doesn't do anything to improve our ability to talk about these issues. And it's certainly, someone who's in the middle, I doubt is going to be very moved by that kind of argumentation. Now, Tony Simon says, go 60%, right? Instead of meeting people halfway, go 60%, right? At least, in that case, people can't accuse you of not trying.
Now, your world is sociology, and how did that? It sounds like they reached out to you after the Buffalo thing, the Buffalo incident. Why was that? Why were they reaching out to a sociologist?
Well, I think I'm known as someone who has been studying gun culture for a long time and who attempts to understand gun culture from the inside out. That there are plenty of people who specialize in gun control policy or public health research on gun violence, but there are really very few people who are social scientists who are trying to understand gun culture on its own terms. I think that I'm known as, a person who's done that, who, if someone wants to know why are people so attached to guns or what motivates people to own guns, that I can honestly shed light on that issue based on my 10 years of wandering around gun culture.
Well, the thing that bothers me about that is, so in the last month or so, I forget the exact timing, you had somebody in Buffalo, somebody was motivated by race, seemingly, probably had some mental issues, but what was seemingly motivated by race. You had somebody in Southern California who was motivated by politics, and then you had somebody in Texas who knows what they were motivated by, but it seems like they had some mental health issues as well. None of these three people would, I'm as deep in gun culture as you can get. I think I try not to be, but I'm in the gun bubble. Everybody I know owns a gun, talks about guns, advocates for guns. You know what I mean? I'm as deep as you can get. Nobody I know would consider any of those three people a part of gun culture. You know what I mean? Am I delusional, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, I would agree for the most part. I mean, I think we don't really know a lot about, the deep background of most of these people. And so, it's possible that they are part of gun culture and that they also happen to do these heinous things. But this comes up quite a lot in our academic discussions, which is, I define gun culture as, kind of being composed of people who are lawful civilian gun owners, right? This is the kind of core of the people who constitute gun culture. But there's certainly criminal gun cultures in the United States. If we look at people who are involved in gun trafficking and in a lot of the gang-related inner city violence. But, for me, I treat that as basically a separate group because they don't, they may be influenced by some of what they see in gun culture, their attraction to Glock pistols, for example. But I don't think that they are a routine part of the gun culture that you experience and live in and that I spend most of my time studying. So, I think that's a distinction that is important to make.
I've seen in groups, we have monthly meetings. We actually have 3 every month in different parts of the county, and then I've been in other counties where they have their monthly meetings. I've been in a lot of monthly meetings over the years. And I've actually seen people, who are new, they attend a monthly meeting and they, kind of push out this bravado or whatever, they're big bad gun owner, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And I've seen them kind of be rejected by the group because that's not us. That's not what we're about. We're about responsible gun ownership. We're not about, doing it. We know none of us want to hurt anybody. That's not the whole point. It's the complete opposite point of what gun culture is about. So, I don't know. So what's the call to action here? What do you recommend? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, for me, and again, this is probably excessively born out of my own experience of having, moved, from one world into another and now sort of regularly traveling back and forth. But it's, just take advantage. I don't know that people have the ability to seek out opportunities, but if you find opportunities to talk to people who see things differently than you, that really take advantage of those opportunities to talk, and maybe try not to do it again at these worst possible moments. Right? Don't wait for there to be some mass homicide in an elementary school to talk to people. But I think we always have the ability to be ambassadors and to strike up conversations. And again, even if you don't convince the person that you're talking to, and maybe going in with an attitude of trying to convince someone maybe can become an impediment. Go into a conversation to try to understand someone, why they might see things differently than you, and use that as a basis to kind of formulate ways of relating to that person that could either not bring them to your side, but maybe softens their views some, maybe makes them have to rethink their stereotypical understanding of what a gun owner looks like or sounds like. So I feel like every interaction I have, and I feel this is an obligation, not just as a reality, but every interaction that I have, because I'm sort of publicly associated with guns, is going to reflect on gun owners more broadly. And maybe that's not fair, but that's the reality. So if you're known as a gun person in your neighborhood or your community or your club or wherever, whatever you do and say is going to reflect on other gun owners.
It's enormously tempting for people to give their opinions when, you know what I mean? Like 1 or 2 questions into a discussion, it's extremely tempting for especially when gun advocates tend to really truly know what they're talking about. They've thought a lot about their ideas, they've researched their ideas, and know how to say the right words. And I think it's extremely tempting for people to just lead with that, when maybe they should, I don't know, maybe we should have like a 12-question rule, Professor. Like, don't give your opinion until you've asked the other person 12 questions or something like that. I don't know. Just like a rule of thumb, Yeah.
And, not every comment needs to be responded to. So I'm here with family in California and San Francisco Bay Area, and I don't think they're super anti-gun. They may be some of these people more in the middle, but, someone drops a thing of, when the Second Amendment was written, people used muskets, and there's no response to that. I don't need to respond to that in that moment. So I just let it hang there.
All right.
Thank you, Professor. Awesome
Thanks
job.
a lot, man. That was awesome. Always enjoy your interview. Have a wonderful Memorial Day tomorrow.
You too, guys. I look forward to doing it again.
Thanks for watching this clip from Gun Owners Radio. You can watch us live every Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. California time, right here on our YouTube channel, or if you're in the San Diego area, you can listen to us on 1170 a.m. We're also available on your favorite podcast platform for free. Don't forget to like and subscribe so that you can help restore and protect the Second Amendment, not just in California, but across the country.